Broadcasting from Orchard Park, New York,
and Boca Raton, Florida,
it's the Freight 360 podcast. From freight broker sales tips to sports talk, this podcast is all about helping you grow as a freight broker. We're your hosts, Nate Cross
and Benjamin Kowalski.
Let's talk freight. Yep, buddy. Another week, another discussion on freight, episode 137. Recording back from Orchard Park, New York. My stint in Florida, got to go to the folks' house for a little bit and come down and see you and get some sunshine, you know? It was nice, but it's over. And we had snow like 4 days in the last week. But spring is technically here and summer's around the corner.
Kind of.
What's that?
It's arrived up there and around the corner. I heard the same thing.
Yeah.
One of my buddies texted me. I think I told you, texted me a couple of pictures. They were on their way to their first week of their golf league, and it started snowing in Pittsburgh yesterday. Like a little more than a dusting. Like it was like a good inch or two from the picture is what it looked like.
There was certain parts of Western New York that got like up to 4 inches last night. They're more in like ski country and like in the hills. We didn't really get much. It was snowing, but nothing really stuck. But supposed to be in the 70s this weekend up here. But I got to go play Army, so I don't really get to enjoy it that much. But anyway, we got an awesome episode today. We've gotten a request on this topic quite a bit, and I have this discussion on a regular basis with folks, and it is if I'm considering switching from a W-2 broker as an employee at a brokerage, how can I make the move to become an agent for a brokerage? It's a 1099 contractor, and is it necessarily the right fit? Because it isn't always the case. I got to have this discussion with FreightWaves a couple of months back, really, really briefly, but we're gonna talk through it in quite detail today, and we're gonna break down some of the structural differences, some legal things to consider, moving a book of business, the financial part of it with managing your money side of it and some of maybe of your expenses. But we're going to break it down. But hey, if you're brand new here, we're so glad you found us on this 137th episode. And if you've been with us for a while, welcome back. We're always glad to have you. As always, listenership's growing. Questions are coming in. We got some good ones today at the end of the show. But Ben, what's new in Florida? How's the Ukrainian fundraiser going?
It's been going really well. I think we raised another $1,600 over the past, what would have been the past week. There was a local person, a fitness instructor that did I don't even know what you would call it. I guess it's a fundraiser at a fitness, at like Global Fitness. I can't remember which one it was, but they raised about $500, what was really pretty awesome.
Was it like
attended?
Was it like, hey, you pay to get in and we run like a public class type thing, and then they donated the proceeds?
Yeah, it's a fitness instructor that I'd met through BNI, and I guess she teaches a spin class there, so it was a, kind of like a spin class to raise money for Ukraine, and everybody, paid per head. And they raised quite a bit. Like, it was really impressive.
Cool.
Which helps a lot, because, the initial fundraiser, everybody kind of donates, and it's one of those things where you're like, it's still going on, and you're not just going to keep reaching out to people, so every little bit helps, because it's certainly continuing, and it's not getting any better over there anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, everyone, make sure to check out the link in our description box on YouTube or the show notes on your podcast app there, and make sure to check out the Guardian Angel, Ukrainian Guardian Angel Fund. So.
Yep. And hey, speaking of which, you were at a fundraiser on Monday for Dingus Day.
I was. So Buffalo is there's a strangely large population of Polish folk in Buffalo, Western New York. So the day after Easter every year, if you're not familiar, is Dingus Day is what it's called. It's where girls will have the pussy willow flower plant things, and guys will have squirt guns, and they're supposed to chase each other around and squirt the girls and slap the guys with the pussy willows. It's turned into just a big party and fundraiser every year now. And this year, the proceeds went to the Ukrainian. They created a foundation for the Ukrainian folks over there, and it was cool because normally you see a bunch of Polish flags, but everyone wearing their Polish gear they had Ukrainian flag stickers and Ukrainian flags. It was pretty cool. So, and I know I was gonna try to post some pictures up in your Facebook group for it, or your wife's Facebook group. I don't have any with the Polish flags, but I'm gonna get the Dingus Day pictures up there. So there's a band there called Those Idiots, and they play covers of popular music, but to polka, like a polka version of it. So it was pretty it was entertaining. So my wife and I went there
That's
for a couple
awesome.
hours and had a good time. So, but yeah, on to the next
Man.
string of, let's see, we're past Easter, so the next big thing is going to be like
4th of
Memorial
July.
Day, right? And
Memorial
then
Day.
then 4th of July, right? We're just getting through the year here already. Let's do a quick sports recap here. Um, the I love talking about the Bills and Josh Allen, and it's not football season, but they did announce this year's golf tournament, the fundraiser called The Match. So if you remember last year, Tom Brady and who was he paired with? Phil Mickelson, and then Aaron Rodgers, and I don't remember who the pairings were, but Aaron
I think,
Rodgers and Tom
yeah.
Brady played in it, and they squared off, but they were matched with a pro. So this year they're doing two QBs versus two QBs. So they paired Rodgers and Brady together against Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen. So Mahomes and Allen, who are rivals in the AFC as quarterbacks for the Chiefs and the Bills, are now teammates. I gotta get Trey Griggs' thoughts on that one now that our boys will be playing together. But that's June 1st. It's a Wednesday, and I think it's at, let's see, because they're playing in
They played at Mystic
Vegas.
Rock last year, I think, in
It's in
Vegas.
Vegas this year, and I want to say it's at nighttime on the East Coast. So I want to say like 6 or 7 or something like that at night, East Coast. So figured
It'll be fun to
track a
watch.
few hours. But yeah, that'll be fun.
They're really entertaining. They're all mic'd up, and you get to hear them talking shit on each other as they're playing,
Yeah.
which is it's like you're out kind of playing golf with your friends. I enjoy them.
Exactly. Outside of that, what happened with the tournament, the Harbor Town Hilton Head one last weekend?
Jordan Spieth won. Almost. It did go into a playoff. That's right. Him and Patrick Cantlay. He ended up pulling off. It was his first win since since he became a father. So it was a pretty big deal. It was nice to see him win. I've always liked watching Jordan Spieth play. He's a really good golfer, good human being.
Yeah, for sure. Well, good
He was
stuff.
also, I think he played, yes, he was from Texas, and coming off the Masters, he was very, very influential, I'd read, in getting Scotty Scheffler to play at his alma mater in Texas, and helped really mentor him, which was, obviously last week's Masters winners.
Nice. Well, I think the cool thing about golf is it's literally on 4 days a week, just about all spring and summer long.
Pretty
So
much.
it's always something to talk about and look at before we get into uh, football later in the year. Actually, NBA playoffs are on. I'm not really a big basketball guy, but I honestly couldn't tell you what's happening with it. But if you're a basketball fan, feel free and throw us a little hate mail for not being up to speed on everything.
Yeah.
But the NBA playoffs are happening. There was some controversy about one of the players flipping off the crowd. Literally, I couldn't tell you what team or who it was because that's how little of basketball that I watch. So, all those of you out there that are big fans, I'm sorry. It's just I've got my focus is usually on the NFL and baseball. Okay, episode today on switching to an agent, but first let's give a shout out to our friends over at DAT Freight and Analytics.
Taking the guesswork out of freight with DAT. The DAT Loadboard Network is the largest on-demand freight marketplace in North America, connecting freight brokers with available capacity on any lane. Grow your business with tools that allow you to find new business partners, and you can quickly qualify and onboard new carriers. And with the industry's leading freight rate data, you can make clear and confident pricing decisions. Check out a link in the show notes for a free month of DAT in Power, Express, or Trucker's Edge. And if you are a fan of the show and you are adding licenses, please use our link. It supports us, doesn't cost you anything, saves you money, and helps get us credit. So,
Yeah. There's an affiliates link in the show notes, and it has all the affiliates we've got, whether it's factoring, load boards, TMS platforms, etc. So, all right. So W-2 to 1099. So, my normal job outside of the fun work that we do together here, collaborating for Freight 360, is I oversee a network of independent freight agents for Pierce Worldwide Logistics. So if you're ever looking to become an agent, give me a shout. And we've got a really top-notch agent program. So a lot of the time I spend in work is not just supporting agents, but I often vet new folks who are interested in switching either to our company from another agent-based company, or a lot of times it's folks that come from a W-2 model, right? They're an employee for a brokerage, and they're like, hey, I want to go be an agent and work from home and do it independently on my own and have a better commission split and stuff like that. So I have this conversation quite a bit, and a lot of times I have to take a step back and remember that I've been doing this for a decade plus, but not everyone has been doing the same exact thing as me, right? So they may not be familiar with the agent model. More times than not, they're not familiar with it. So it's a little bit different. So I wanted to start off by I just want to kind of highlight the main differences and what an agent is versus what a W-2 employee is. And then we're going to break down, how it would look to switch over. And Ben, you can try to pick my brain on whatever you want. People love to ask questions about this stuff, and it's my expertise. So I'll start off by saying that when you're a freight agent, you are not an employee of a company, right? An employee and employer, that's a W-2 relationship, which means they hire you, they fire you, they withhold payroll taxes, they pay a portion of employment taxes on your behalf. They can offer you benefits like medical, dental, 401k, things like that. When you're a 1099 independent contractor is how it's legally described by the IRS. Independent contractors are essentially freelancers, right? Self-employed. Think of like your Uber and Lyft drivers. Those are 1099. You're not employed. You are literally bringing your own car to go contract under Uber or Lyft and take care of business for those who need those services. The same thing applies as a 1099 agent in the freight brokerage world, which means you've got your home office. You've got your customers, right? You bring your relationships with you, and then in return, you're going to be operating under the legal authority and insurance and bond, etc., of a licensed freight brokerage company. So in our case...
So say that again. The last piece, I want you to reiterate. What are the things that they're operating under? Like, because this is a question that it's come up in our coaching recently, and a couple of the guys I've coached have asked this too, is, okay, so let's say they own their own brokerage. Let's say they just started their own business, and let's say they've got customers, right? And they're getting bogged down with billing and invoicing, and they're like, You know what, like, this is a lot to learn all of this at one time. But again, they're not day one. They've got some customers, like, they're doing significant business. I don't know, we'll call it a handful of $1,000 a month in gross profit, but they can't get the prospecting because, again, they're getting eaten up by back end tasks, right? If they come under, and they would come, let's just use you as an example. Like, let's just say they moved and worked underneath you. What comes with them? The company name? Do they get to use your DAT logins? Like, where does that line get drawn, and how does that look to everybody else?
So every company is different. I'll explain it from my perspective, and then I'll kind of give comparisons to how some other agent-based companies are. So first of all, you're always going to operate under their authority, because to broker freight, you need to be authorized and licensed by the FMCSA. Okay. Each individual does not have to, but the actual company on record, the broker on file, has to be licensed. So let's say you went from a C.H. Robinson to a Pierce, right? Both C.H. Robinson and Pierce have brokerage authorities from the FMCSA. Yep. In addition to that, question. Yes.
So just because I want to really go, like you would say, Barney style, right? So if I own my own brokerage, what happens with my brokerage? Do I just let it sit there? Does it do anything? Do I have to keep paying insurance?
It. Yeah, you
okay, so you
don't
let that
have
run
a use
out
for it anymore. So if you're a licensed broker, you don't have to renew your authority. You don't have to keep your bond or any insurances that you may have had. You can actually cancel your insurance and likely get prorated your premium if they hit their minimum earnings or whatever. Depends on the insurance policy.
Okay, so all those expenses disappear.
Gone.
Immediately upon switch. Well, that's a pretty big upside.
In addition, similar to the W-2 side, all the billing and payables are done by that brokerage, not by you. So whether let's say you're a sales rep or a W-2 broker for a larger company, or you're an agent, right? You're moving freight, you're covering loads, you're managing your customers, you're doing all that stuff, track and trace. What you're not doing is invoicing customers, paying trucks, doing quick pays, handling claims, those administrative back office tasks that you would be doing if you are licensed by the FMCSA as a freight broker.
So to simplify this, that means I do the stuff as a broker, the core job responsibilities: prospecting, finding customers, building my carrier base, track and trace, making sure loads are getting delivered, right? All of those functions. Your role is to provide me the insurance. You're providing me all of my licenses. You're providing me my logins. You're providing me my TMS. And you're going to collect all of my money. I don't have to collect any of it.
Yes. Now, the caveat there is some agent-based companies don't provide all of that for you. So I've talked to folks that have switched to our company, and they were an agent before, but they were responsible to collect all their carriers' paperwork and submit it themselves, or to send invoices out, or to pay for a technology fee that covered load boards or a TMS. A reputable company will not have the agents doing those kind of tasks or make the agents
Let me
pay
throw
for
one
it.
out. Let me throw one out for you because this one came up. Somebody asked me about this week. Priority One. And I'm familiar with who they are. I've coached a few people over there, but not that familiar with the back end, right? They're pretty big, aren't they?
Yeah, Priority One they're primarily an LTL brokerage. So
Okay.
Priority One, if I remember correctly, they are owned by a parent company that's actually a shipper, and I think they do like steel or something like that. And this is like maybe 10 or 15 years ago. They launched an internal brokerage, grew it out, and then eventually grew to become an agent model and got really strong on the LTL side. So companies like Global Trans and Priority One, they are agent based. They're very large, but they specialize in one part of the market, which in those cases is less than truckload or LTL. You can still broker full truckload under them, but that's what their focus is. Like, hey, we're really good with our LTL rates. We have good contract rates and discounts with LTL providers.
So that really drives the point home that anybody out there considering this really needs to know who they're talking with and what they're getting provided. Because this is definitely a case of not everybody's created equal. Pretty much, it could be carte blanche, like you get a little of this and a little of this and none of this, and you really need to know what this agent is actually offering you before you can even evaluate whether or not it's a good fit. Sounds like.
Yep, absolutely. So I guess I kind of broke down what the role of an agent is. It's very similar to a W-2, but think about this. When you're not employed by somebody, you have to set your own hours. You're working from home. You're managing yourself. You're setting your own goals and holding yourself to your own expectations, right? You don't have a boss or a supervisor telling you, hey, you didn't make enough calls this week, right? I don't do that with my agents, right? Their productivity is reflected in their commission check. If they don't move freight, they don't make money. If they move a lot of freight at a low margin, they don't make a lot of money. If they move a good amount of freight at a healthy margin, they're going to make really good money compared to being a W-2. Now, another big difference is you don't get a salary. You're straight commission in a lot of these cases. Most of them. I've seen a couple out there that'll say, hey, we'll give you an advance or a commission draw for your first couple of months, and then we'll pay you, 40 or 50% commission once you get caught up and that draw is made full. But you're not going to get that 40K base or whatever, right? Because a lot of times we'll see 40K base with like 15 or 20% commission, whereas on the agent side, you're straight commission. Now, the commission percentage is typically much larger, and the reason that agent-based companies can do that is because they're selective in who they bring on and they don't have to train them, right? So like in our case, we don't take on folks that are brand new. We don't take on people that need training on what brokerage is, what a truck is, what an MC is. They already know that. They're already educated. They've already built up a customer base. They've already been successful in brokerage, and now they want to take the next step and, hey, I want to do this independently on my own. Because one of the things that's cool about being an agent that you can do is you can build an agency, right? Not just be a one-person agent. You can build a full office and operate autonomously under that brokerage. So you could be the agency owner, and then you can hire sales reps. You can hire account managers. You can hire administrative folks to help you out, or a track and trace team, and they're all part of your agency. So you truly are a self-employed business owner. The only big difference is the company that you are brokering under, that's whose name is on the invoice to your customer. That's the MC number that you're using. Those are the brokerage reviews that carriers are seeing when they find you on DAT or TruckStop or TIA Watchdog or whatever, right? Google, for example, right? You're going to be representing whatever company you're an agent for instead of yourself. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. And it really does help. And again, it depends on where you are, which agency you're evaluating. But that's some of the stuff. And again, this is just a personal opinion. Like, I'm an accountant and I wouldn't do that. Like, I know where my skill set provides the most value, right? And it's bringing in customers, dealing with operational issues, training people, and scaling, right? I have no desire to build out a back end to deal with invoicing, to go through any of that stuff. Like, it's tedious things that, like, I would rather have somebody that enjoys doing that back end admin stuff all day long and then scales it and gets better at it, right? To your point,
Yeah.
right? You guys have been doing this for how long? Which makes me want to ask the other side of this coin for a second, right? Because the other question that I get a lot of is with the owners that I work with, and a lot of them that reach out to me, is they want to launch agencies. They want to start bringing on agents, right? They're like, you know what? We've got an office, we've got a couple people in here. We want to bring on some of our own agents, right? What are some of the expectations that the agents have, like the real players, like the brokers that you deal with that are moving from, agency to agency based on like the best fit, that, they kind of move around in the market to some degree based on whether or not they're getting what they should. What do they expect to see from a brokerage that is saying, hey, we now have an agent program? Like, what's the bare minimum?
An agent is typically going to want this. They're going to have the same expectations as the top W-2 model brokerages out there. So your TQLs and CH Robinsons, right? They want support when they need it. They want a credit line approved for a customer when they need it. They want that credit line bumped when they need it. They want that certificate of insurance produced for their customer when they need it. They want a carrier approved when they need it, right? They want their technology to work. They want the support they need when they need it. Whereas if you're going to start bringing on agents, you are no longer just running your own book of business. Now you've got to take care of all those other folks that you bring on.
It's so funny you said that, because that was my response was, and I was like, honestly, you're going to be speaking with two of these people that this came up with in the past month, but I was like, I can tell you that when I was being recruited out of W-2, that was my conversation. I'm like, if you want me to leave here, I need to know that you can provide everything that I get here, right? I get that I'm not going to be W-2. You're not going to handle my payroll. But the reality is, if I'm going to move my book of business, I need to know that like there is an ops department, that when the one-off random thing is, somebody can handle that. There's got to be a claims department or some way to handle that, because I don't want to deal with it. To be able to call when you have some weird hazmat issue and somebody that's going to be able to like figure it out, research it. I mean, there's a lot. I want to make sure if I got a customer and they've got larger insurance requirements, you better have that or get it, because if the value and the juice is worth the squeeze and they're offering me enough, I don't want to hear that like you can't afford the premium because it's too big, right? Those were the conversations I remember. In fact, you and I were having when you and I met when I was at TQL.
Oh yeah, yep. No, you're absolutely right. And I've had people ask me too. They're like, well, why would somebody want to have agents instead of W-2 employees? Like, why would you want to pay somebody more commission to do the same job as a W-2? And here's the answer. Think about the turnover in the W-2 world. The first 6 months on average that somebody is hired into the W-2 model, you have no idea if they're going to succeed, if they're going to catch on, if they're going to even last, if they're going to produce. Whereas with agents, you might be paying them twice as much or more in commission, but you're not paying a base. You're not having to go through a training period where they're just an expense and not actually, a profit producing portion of your company. You're bringing in quality people that you vet out, that they've done this job, they've succeeded at it. And not every agent works out, right? There could be cultural differences where the culture of my company may be, different than what they're used to or what they want. Some people, they want a very corporate structured thing where, there's a supervisor and the supervisor's boss is the director. And as an agent, in our case, with Pierce, we're very, very transparent and we're laid back, and it's a family-owned organization, and we treat our agents as if they're customers of ours, not like they're, the peasant that's working there that, hey, you didn't make enough calls, right? I coach agents all the time, and I help my agents grow, and I help them through big opportunities. But I don't teach somebody what freight brokering is. That's an expectation before they are a good fit for us, that you already know the industry at a basic level.
And here's the other real reality from operating inside them is that's their largest overhead number. The TQLs of the world, the big companies, their largest expense of growth is in hiring the people that don't make it and training those people that don't make it, right? And that's one of the main reasons non-competes exist, is because they're literally training thousands of people that don't make it, that get sent off into the country again. And it's like, they're basically in some ways running just a paid freight broker education for 3, 4, 5 months and then sending them off, right? And the vast majority don't make it. And that is a huge expense, right? So if you want to scale and you've got the choice of, I'm going to hire 10, 9 won't make it this year. That's a large number, right? Or I could bring on one agent out of the 10 that I can, because you got to recruit them. They're not just going to find you either, I got to imagine. But
Yeah.
like it's a much cheaper, lower risk, higher margin proposition for the business.
Yeah, it is. They're not easy to find though. You could go to a college as a TQL or an Integrity Express or a Coyote or CH Robinson, and you could hire a class of new trainees, right? Because they're all like, ooh, you're going to pay me a salary? It's my first big boy job. But in return, you don't know if they're going to make it. Now, on the flip side, typically an agent or someone that's already a seasoned broker, they know what they're worth and they know their value and then they know what they're looking for, most times. So there's a recruiting effort that's a lot stronger on the agent side versus the W-2 side. So what I have found in the recruiting side, that's all I did at first on the agent model was recruit. All I did was go out there and see who was a good fit for the company. And this is at a previous organization that I worked for. And I quickly found out that the ones that seemed really eager to join on a first call and there was like no competition, they typically weren't a good fit because they weren't quality and they weren't sought after by the other agent-based companies out there. The ones that were really, really good, they weren't as easy to, come to terms and be on the same page and have a decision made by them or essentially close them as a new agent, if you want to look at it that way, because they knew there could be 5 companies trying to recruit them, all pitching the same thing. Hey, we're the best ones out there. We have this commission and this technology and we do this, that, and the other thing, and we're the best thing since sliced bread. And at the end of the day, you've got to go through that it's the same way as prospecting a customer, right? You've got to go through that whole relationship building and trust building process and be truthful, because if you set a bad expectation and you don't carry through on it as a brokerage owner to a new agent, they're not going to last there. And then they're going to tell everyone they know, don't go work for this company. Don't ever be an agent for them. They're terrible. They've got this idiot working here. They treated me like garbage. It took them 3 days to get back to me on this question. You've got to set proper expectations.
And that's a big thing, right? Like, that's the other thing that I've had conversations, with owners about, saying, oh, it seems like a great way to just add some revenue without having to add a lot of back-end staff. And I'm like, it's kind of the opposite. Like, you need to be able to support them as if they are in your office all of the time for all of their needs. And that was exactly what we were talking about. I'm like, there's competition amongst the people that have books of business. Because guess what? They know what that book's worth. They created the value. They see every dollar of gross profit that crosses their desk. They know what goes to their company. They know what those things cost, and they know what they're getting, right? And You're not the only person offering this. So if you don't have something competitive and you aren't in line with industry standards, like, it's kind of just a waste of time to even pursue it if you're not going to be willing to put up, like you said, a competitive offer out there because they're going to shop it against everyone else.
Yeah. So I want to add another thing in there. We talk about having to support your agents and your agent network. So I want to compare it to a trucking company that wants to inject a brokerage division to their company, right? I've had a lot of 7 to 10 trucks, right? And they're like, hey, we want to be, we want to open a brokerage division, or hey, we want to open an agency so we can broker under your authority. And the one common thing that is either leads to their success or failure is, do they have at least one person, if not more, dedicated to the brokerage side of it? Because if they don't, all they're going to be focused on is loading their own trucks and tracking their own trucks and making the money for their trucks, not the brokerage. Same thing applies for adding agents to your company. You have to have staff to help manage and support your agents. You have to have additional accounting folks and carrier development reps and folks that do claims when you add more business into your organization. And that is exactly what our company and others out there that have succeeded have done right, is they know, hey, we have to scale with the growth of our agent network, not just add agents, and then spread our people thin at the corporate office. So food for thought for those of you wanting to start an agent program. It's like starting a brokerage, right? There's a learning curve and there's a lot of hurdles that you got to cross over. You can do it. It's just, it's not as easy or as sexy as it might seem, or as appealing as it might seem. There's there's a lot of work that goes into it, but it is a very rewarding thing if you can get some trusted folks in your organization to expand your business that way.
So tell me a little bit about where the differences in taxes, tax-wise.
Yeah. So I mentioned 1099 versus W-2, right? The biggest thing here is that your paycheck as a W-2 employee, you're going to be your state if you live in one of the 38 states that have a state income tax, like beautiful New York State where I live, where we're like one of the highest.
Not where I live.
Your employer, Tennessee, Florida, Texas, yeah, they don't have it. And I think Illinois, I don't know, there's like 12 of them out there that don't have it. But if you have a state income tax, your employer withholds out of your paycheck your state tax, your federal income tax, and then your FICA. And that's your Social Security and Medicaid, okay? And now if you go to become a 1099 agent, there is zero money withheld from your paycheck, from your commission check. Does that mean you don't have to pay it? No, it does not.
That's
you
awesome.
have to manage it yourself.
I'm
so
not going to pay the
only
man.
You're paying that state and federal tax, the FICA. You're also paying your previous employer's portion of that FICA. So if you don't understand FICA, there's a 15.3% tax. It's called employment tax. That's broken up by Medicare or Medicaid
Social
and
Security, Medicare.
Yeah, Social Security.
Medicaid.
And I always forget Medicaid and Medicare what the difference is. One's for people that are disabled and one's for people that are old or whatever. Or whatever. One's for people that are poor, one's for people that are old. I forget which one's which. But anyway, you now are taking on that additional half. So 7.65% tax hike that you're paying yourself, right? There's caps on it. So like you only pay part of that up to a certain dollar amount of income. And then once you hit that level, the other half of it actually increases. So it's not a perfect 7.65% increase, but that's the rough number on average. So you're paying taxes yourself. Now, how do you pay them, right? They're not being withheld. You have to make quarterly estimates 4 times a year and send them to the IRS and to your state. So, like, for example, April 15th is tax day. This year was April 18th because of the holiday. Everyone that's self-employed, so whether you own a business or you're an agent or whatever, you drive Uber, you had to send in your estimated tax burden for the first quarter of the year. And you'll do that 3 more times throughout the year. The last one ends up being in January, right? And that's actually that's your closeout. You'll know how much you earned in the 12-month calendar year. So, and hey, if you don't make quarterly estimates or you under withhold, you'll get a penalty. Same thing as if you didn't fill out your W-4 properly when you took an employment job. So you're paying your own taxes, and that self-employment payroll tax as well. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Which is why a higher commission percentage is required. Because if I'm going to pay an extra 7 or 8% in taxes, and I'm not going to make that an additional commission percentage, why would I do it?
And that's a big number too, right? Like, I mean, 8% of what you make in an entire year, you're going to be paying out in taxes that you weren't before, right? So, I mean, it's something to consider. And it's also something to consider when you're evaluating agencies or even small W-2s versus agencies, because that is the big difference. I mean, that's what they're going to pay versus you. And a lot of times W-2s will give you also health benefits where you aren't going to see those in the 1099 world.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's not uncommon for an employer to pay half, if not more, of the employee's healthcare premium, right? Same with dental, vision, all that, right? 401k matching, right? You don't get any of that as an agent. You can't.
Disability.
Exactly.
Short-term, long-term.
Yep.
A lot of those little things that are, and again, they come at a cost. And I'll tell you, for somebody that has been on both sides of the fence, you get this. I always feel you get to spend your money more effectively when you are on the contractor side. But the flip side is you don't get the value and buying power of being with everyone else. So like you typically save money when you're with the big company, but the policies usually aren't as good as what you get by yourself. So
exactly. You might spend a little bit more, right? But you have access to the open market. Same thing. Think about 401k, right? A lot of people are like, well, I'm getting a match on my 401k, so I want to keep it here. You might only have like 10 funds to throw it into, whereas if if you're an independent contractor, you can open up a.
You can put it in Bitcoin. Like, it doesn't
You
matter.
can, yeah, do
Put it
whatever you
whenever
want. You can
want.
put it in, and this is not a finance or retirement lesson, but you can do
Yeah.
a SEP IRA. You can do a solo 401k. Obviously your traditional and Roth IRAs, and you've got access to the entire open market, thousands and thousands and thousands of funds that are out there. Yeah, you're not gonna get the match, but you've got other options that are out there that you don't have as a W-2 outside of your IRA, obviously. So that's the financial part of it, and the tax side of it, it's a little bit different. So I always recommend anybody that's an agent have a good tax person. So if you just go to TurboTax every year and you pay your whatever it is, 20, 30 bucks, and you file your stuff, it's a little bit more complex as a 1099. You've got some stuff you can write off because you've got expenses now, right? I had to pay for my laptop, I had to pay for my internet or my phone bill, or hey, I drove out to go see a customer in person, or I had a meal with a customer, or whatever the case might be. Those you can write off when you're self-employed, the IRS went away with a lot of the W-2 style business expenses. I think like 3 or 4 years ago.
Well, also they raised the standard deduction to the point
Right.
where, like, if you don't have a pretty large home or a mortgage, it doesn't really make sense to itemize. So even when I had thought that I did, I wasn't really even coming close to the threshold, and it was pretty high. Like, I mean, the threshold for itemizing was like in the tens of thousands of dollars in expenses, and I was like, wow.
Yeah,
Because
I mean, as a married filing jointly now, it's like 24,000 and change or something like that. So if you're not going to itemize over that, take the standard deduction. Again, we're
no,
Ben,
but
you and I we're not tax pros, but we've been around this enough. So.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing I've learned on both sides is that I've always had a good accountant. It's worth spending the time to find one, and it's worth trusting that person because, hey, I don't know. Such a big portion of our income and what we earn goes that way. So walk us through.
I want to talk about moving your book of business in tandem with some of the legal aspects of this.
Yeah, walk us through like an example, like a real world example or something.
Will do. So to preface it, right, a lot of W-2 folks, you signed a non-compete or a non-solicit or a confidentiality agreement, or whatever the case might be. Check your employment contract. You can get it from HR, and if you don't have a copy yourself, you may want to do it pretty surreptitiously, or don't do it in an obvious way where you're like, I need my employment contract. Do I have a non-compete? Because obviously you're raising a red flag. So what you'll want to do is I always recommend review your employment contract, and I always recommend have a legal professional also review it and look at what it clearly states. Is there a time period in which they're telling you can't go work for a competitor? Is there a geographical radius around it? Is there a list of customers you can't touch? And I will tell you this: a non-compete or non-solicit that is broad typically is non-enforceable. So, for example, if I've seen ones that get shot down in court where they say you can't work for 2 years anywhere in the U.S. in this industry, and it's like, how am I supposed to make a living for my family? They don't last. A lot of companies, the bigger ones, have gotten smart and they put a realistic radius. Hey, you can't work for a competitor within 25 miles of us for 6 months.
The
right?
interesting
A
piece
judge
of that,
may, if they actually get that far, the judge may uphold that. You never know.
I always find that so wait a minute. Does that consist of where your customers are or where the business is physically located?
I mean, like anything legally, it's whatever a judge wants to decide. But it's typically, your employer's office versus your new company's office.
Got it.
And it's kind of a gray area in the agent world because, like in my example, when I switched from my previous company to Pierce, I had a non-compete. And I went through the legal battle with it. And I had a radius, 50 miles, that I couldn't work within for a competitor. But my competitor was in a different state, in a different time zone, hundreds of miles away. And they argued, well, he's going to work from home, which is within this radius. And it's like, okay, so do you want me to get an office space 51 miles away from you just to like? So I mean, but what it came down to was we had a realistic negotiation. There was some legal stuff, and I agreed I'm not going to poach. I'm going to go off and do my own thing, because of things that have happened in the past. It doesn't make sense for me to stay here. It's not going to be good for me long term with what I want. And if if my ego or my soul leaves the door there, right? My work ethic leaves the door. My ass better follow it because I'm no good to the head company anymore if I'm not putting my heart and soul into it. So we came to an agreement and we moved on. And it was all good. That's not the case with all companies. Some of the big W-2s out there, TQL, CH Robinson, Integrity, they have legal departments whose job it is find where these guys and gals went. Hit them up with legal letters, cease and desist letters, sue them if we need to. I've seen them go to court 3, 4, 5 years after they left, and they're still battling it out. So
I have one of them around here. I didn't even pursue another job, and I got 2 or 3 of them just as a matter of, I'm sure, practice, that they just go out automatically.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of times at a bigger company, when you leave, like next day, they're going to overnight certified mail, signature required, send you that. A copy of your employment letter with a nice little reminder, hey, by the way, you signed this, don't be going to work anywhere else. So that's my preface. It was kind of long-winded, but you might have some legal challenges.
So let's say they've worked through this. Yeah, so let's say they've talked. Okay? Yeah, they talk to their attorney, and the attorney says, hey, like, this looks like it's way overreaching. Don't think it'll be an issue. You're clear. Follow my directions.
Or it's worth the risk, right?
Worth the risk, yeah.
It's worth paying the legal money to defend yourself if it comes to that. So you got to move your book of business over. And if you have dedicated carriers, you got to move them with you too. And the way that you go about doing this is you need to get ahead of it, right? So I always recommend if someone's going to switch, don't make a move, leave your company Friday, start the next Monday, and then call your customers and say, oh, I'm over here now. Send me your loads.
Doesn't work picking my loads up.
So here's the things you have to look at. Talk to your customers. Are they able? Do they want to work with you? A lot of times they do, right? Because they built a relationship with you, not with the company that you work for, and they want to keep working with you, and they'll work with you. So it's typically asking for their discretion, like, hey, I'm going over here. I respectfully ask that we keep our business between us, and don't go back and tell my previous employer that they're so mean for not taking care of me. Or if you have possible legal ramifications, don't go advertise that you're working with them over another company, right? Mm-hmm. Same with carriers. So make sure your customer's business is going to follow you. Can they onboard your new company? Does your new company have the insurance that they need in place? Do they have all the technology or whatever you need in place? Do they have, you name it, right? Fill in the blank. Is it a portable customer? Mm-hmm. That's why I call it a portable book of business when somebody switches like that. Same with carriers, right? You might switch to a company and that carrier is like, dude, I've had a terrible experience with them. I'm not working. They don't pay us on time. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure that your go-to customers, your go-to motor carriers, have that transparent discussion with them. Just be upfront and honest. Like, hey, I'm making this move. It's better for me. It's better for you. It's better for my family. I'm going to be able to support you better over here. I'm going to be happier over here. We've got a better back office team that'll take care of you guys. They're paying carriers faster. We've got a way better reputation in the market with carriers, stuff like that. So have that conversation. And then what I usually recommend is if I'm going to leave this company and I'm moving here, take a couple weeks to plan that transition. I've had people take like over a month. They set up 1 or 2 customers. They move the business over as they're learning the new processes, the new software, right? And then they move a couple more, and they move them all over. On the flip side, I've had people that got fired or cut out of their company's system, and they had to move ASAP. Mm-hmm. And it's more headaches, but you can still do it. It's just a lot more moving parts on your end. But I always recommend talk to your customers first. Be transparent with them so there's no no surprises. Same thing with any of your go-to carriers. So
what are the have you had any customers, or are there any common issues that brokers run into with their customers not wanting to move, other than the obvious ones like, hey, we just had a bad experience with that agency for whatever reason? But apart from that, I can't imagine.
So 2 big ones that I've run into is they already have an assigned rep at the new company, mm-hmm. and that company has a policy that states, we're going to protect this account to broker that's already been here. Yep. Or it could be that on the same token there, they could be working, it could be that same rep at your customer, and they're like, well, I'm not going to give it to both of you. Like, I just want to give it to one of you. So it's just kind of weird. The other thing is, hey, our company has a requirement. You've got to check the boxes on these. In business for this long, carry this amount of insurance. I've seen people that have to be asset based. You name it, right? And
But the
if
first one brought up,
the new company doesn't meet those or is not willing to
Yeah.
pay for the insurance or whatever, I've seen that happen too.
those are the two biggest ones I thought of, and it's a good point for anyone out there considering this, is that make sure your customers are clear with the agency you're looking to go with. Make sure there aren't any restrictions on who you can prospect, that somebody doesn't have a customer that you've been working to try to get. You know what I mean? You and I talked about that a long time ago, where I think you ran
Yeah.
into that, where somebody was like just about to close a customer, and someone I think it was maybe even an LDI, like had that customer already, and then they couldn't actually use it once they got it. So
Yep. The other thing too is credit lines. So different brokerages approach credit and payment terms differently. So, like for example, when I worked for LDI, they didn't make their own credit decisions. They used a third-party company submitted. Well, they had some subjective say, but they used a company that would tell them, here's their risk score, and based on how we've set up with you guys and your choices, here's how much credit we're going to approve and insure for them. Because they had an insurance company that basically insured their credit lines, or a portion of them. So if a customer came up over their tolerance or over their risk level, they get denied. They're prepay only. Whereas like with Pierce and a lot of other companies that take, I'm not bashing any companies, because there's a reason people have different decision-making processes. But like with Pierce, we'll take a subjective look. We're going to look at a credit report, obviously. We're going to look at a customer's payment history, but there's always a subjective side to that. So for example, customers that any company would look at, in late 2020, they're going to see likely a lot of payment issues and slow pays in the middle of the year because their revenues dropped and they couldn't cash flow the same way that they could. The whole economy saw that in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So things like that. Or let's say that a customer they do a lot of project work and they pay in chunks, like we talked about a couple weeks ago. Or let's say, let's say the new brokerage says, dude, they pay in 45 days and their margin's 8%. We're not giving them, we're not going to give them a credit line or bump it up. It's not worth it for us. And that's a business decision you have to make. So so credit is another big part of it. So can the new company, will they let you work with them? Will they give you credit? Do they check the box on all the customer's requirements? Will that brokerage sign your customer's contract and agree to their terms? That's another one, right? Because everyone looks at contracts differently. And then will the customer actually move with you? So that's it in a nutshell, man. I could talk about this for decades, but
There was a lot in there.
there's a lot. So good stuff. Let's get into Q&A. First, shout out to our friends over at Lean Solutions Group. Again, check the affiliate link down in the description box on YouTube, or the show notes or episode notes on your podcast app or player. Lean Solutions Group, this quarter, we're all focused on labor shortage, so make sure you check out their nearshore staffing options there. So leangroup.com. They have the nearshore model where they've got folks in offices down in Colombia, South America, trained for weeks and weeks and weeks on transportation. And then you get to pick and choose and hire folks to join your team, whether it's staffing for the administrative side, account management, operations, track and trace, you name it. Check them out at leangroup.com. Today's question. So the first one, this is good. It was kind of a long paragraph from one of our listeners. But they essentially said, hey, we've got a customer of ours that is local, and they want us to coordinate the delivery of some stuff, the installation of this stuff, and all that. Is that something that we can do as a broker? Is that a different license, or how does this work? And here's your answer. You can definitely do that as a freight broker. You have the same requirements and restrictions that a freight broker has. So, for example, if you don't have a motor carrier asset authority, you can't be driving the trucks that do this, right? You're a broker. It's your job to coordinate and contract that transportation. So you have to hire legally authorized and insured motor carriers. And a lot of times you'll have these local, it's called like white glove service. You'll have these local companies. They might have like your
Sprinter vans,
Mercedes
box
Sprinter
trucks.
vans or
Yep.
what's that?
Sprinter vans, small box trucks,
Box
like.
trucks with a lift gate on them, right? Because
Mhm.
it could be, let's say, your customer ships um, home theater stuff or like audio visual stuff, and they want to offer the full solution. Like, hey, their customer is buying, they're opening up a new store and they want everything delivered and installed. Well, you can hire a motor carrier to do that, and a lot of times they'll include with it, some of these specialized companies will do the unload, we'll do the install, full white glove service. We'll take care of everything for you, and that's who you're paying. So yes, as a freight broker, you can do that. That's called white glove service. It's a very specialized niche, and a lot of times in a local area, the carriers and companies that do these, that own the trucks and do the installations, they typically have the customers directly, so there's not a lot of room for brokers to be involved. But the question came from an opportunity that this broker has. So yeah, you can absolutely get involved in that. Make sure your margin's calculated in, and you're not going to have any surprise add-on charges from the carrier for, hey, actually it's going to cost you an extra $500 because we had to do this. Make sure that that's all figured in there. Second question. What TMS do you recommend for a budget-focused broker? And to be specific, they asked, I want to keep it under $900 a month. So, which we don't know if it's just them or if it's a team of 10 or 50 or what. We have checked out and used and are fans of Ascend TMS and Rose Rocket TMS for newer brokers, not just newer brokers too, like folks that are as you grow, right? As Tim from Ascend he's told us himself, like, hey, we can do 80% of every TMS out there. So there's still going to be some things that we're not customized to your company for, but you're getting the bulk majority of what you need in this cost-effective platform.
And there's
right?
tons of carriers in
it.
it. Like they really scaled that. The amount of carriers that go on their internal load board within Ascend and just go through their platform is enormous now because they run just such a high volume of loads through Ascend. Mostly because I think they got some deals with some of the much larger 3PLs that also push their loads through there.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. So I would check out Ascend and Rose Rocket. They're both really nice, web-based, very user-friendly, nice user interface. They both have that freemium version where you can basically try it out, like try before you buy. Ascend gives you a free month, and Rose Rocket lets you test it out for, I think, a month. Or they have, maybe it's like a watered-down version.
They have
and then
a
Ascend will
freemium.
even just give you their free version for life if you want it.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very bare bones, but when you're paying for them, they're nice. They're nice platforms, especially if you're a newer broker. And I want to say like Ascend is under $100 a month. Yeah. I think it's like 80 per user. And then Rose Rocket, theirs was, I think it might have been based off of load volume. I forget their exact pricing. We had them on for an episode, and they have a sales department that'll walk you through your specific needs on it. But
throw it in YouTube, throw in Rose Rocket and Free 360. You'll find the full interview on it.
And then like I said, we have an affiliate with them, so we've checked them out, we vetted them. We don't just vouch for anyone's software or solution out there unless it's tried and tested. So, all right, last one, and I loved reading this.
Me too.
And I remember I asked this question when I was new. Is how did brokers work the spot market before the internet, right? Because everything's online now. So
I knew the second one, didn't know the first one.
Yeah, so here's the first one. Is DAT. The name originally came from dial a truck. So every morning, and this is the same way that brokers and shippers used to work together, is they would fax their loads over in the morning. Mm-hmm. So a broker would fax a shipper would fax their broker loads in the morning, or a shipper would fax a trucking company their loads in the morning. That's how they would work it out. Now, brokers and carriers, DAT or dial-a-truck was the centralized. They would aggregate all this data, right? So brokers would submit all of their available loads, and carriers would submit their available trucks and their desired lanes and destinations. And then the carriers and the brokers would request, hey, can you send me, trucks that are available in here? Or trucks would say, hey, can you send me the loads that are available to ship out of here? And that's how it was done. They would fax stuff in the morning. This is like back in the early 80s, but that's how it was done. And then the second part of that is at truck stops, right? So obviously we know truckstop.com was originally called Internet Truck Stop, or ITS, and it's like DAT and our load boards has replaced what literally was called a load board at a truck stop. There'd be a board or a TV in later years full of the available loads there that brokers would have posted up there. So a broker would call in or fax in their list, here's all my loads I have for the next whatever, couple days or week. And drivers, when they get to a truck stop, they could see. So if they know, hey, I'm delivering tomorrow morning around the corner from here, here's all the loads that I can call on for my next shipment to haul. That's how it was done.
And I remember my first customer happened to be a guy that came from that generation. Like he was running the brokerage for an asset company, and he had been there since the late 70s. This guy had to be mid 60s when I first started working with him. He was like his last couple months on the job. And then I worked with the guy he trained, and it was just really funny because their carrier base was a holdover from that generation. It was literally books of paper with carrier names through it. And then he had to put it all in the computer and then put it all into Excel and then put their emails in there. But this guy, as late as 2016, was brokering like a significant amount of loads. I'd say 30, 40 loads a week, maybe close to 50, like old school phone numbers, calling them and working off his load list that had grown and changed since he was in the 80s. Carrier list.
I told you this story before, and I think I've mentioned on the show. I had a guy like 6 or 7 years ago, and I remember asking him like, "Hey, what software are you using now?" And he's like, "Nate, pencil and paper, man." He was old school. He never wanted to change. Everything he did was the old school way, and some people, they don't want to change their ways. And if it works for you, it works for you. But for those of you that like technology and stuff and the internet now, there's a lot of tools out there. So.
Yeah.
So that's all I got, man. That
was a lot.
Episode packed full of information. As a last shout out, I know I talked a bit about Pierce Worldwide Logistics and the agent program. If you're interested and you want to learn about Pierce and about our agent program and the opportunities there, just reach out to me directly. You can send me a message on LinkedIn or on Facebook or right through our Freight 360 website if you want to. I get those emails. Feel free and reach out. I've had dozens that have reached out in the past. Like I said, if you're brand new, it's not a good fit. We don't train folks on how to broker. We're looking for folks that are experienced, have a quality book of business that can move with them, because we're offering a top-notch program. So that's that's the trade-off there. What do you got for closing final thoughts here?
Not much. We covered a lot in here, man. I'm kind of like tuned out. Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And until next time, go Bill. That wraps up this episode of Freight 360. Check out the show notes for links to anything that we've referenced on this episode. And make sure to visit us online at freight360.net to see our entire library of episodes, videos, blogs, and more.
And make sure to check us out on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily and weekly tips and content. And if you'd like your question answered on the show, fill out the Contact Us form on our site, and we'll see you next week.